Hey everyone, this is Swapnil Mathur and today I have with me the Canon G15 that I'll be reviewing for all of you. The Canon G15 is a part of the advanced point and shoot category and includes a 12 megapixel sensor along with a lens that goes from 28 at the widest end all the way to 140 at the telephoto end. Now the advanced point and shoot category is essentially categorized by the fact cameras in this category have a larger sensor, they have a fast aperture lens, and it has a bunch of dials that makes shooting a lot more similar to what it would be like when you're using a DSLR. So the Canon G15 has a 12 megapixel sensor like I pointed out, and the aperture on this thing goes all the way from f1.8 at the widest end to f2.8 at the telephoto end, which is very impressive. Other cameras in this category like the RX100 or the Panasonic LX7 or the Nikon P7700, all of these cameras do not have such an impressive aperture range. However, the one place where we feel that the Canon G15 loses out is in the size of its sensor. While the RX100 has a 1-inch sensor, the one in the G15 is only 1 by 1.7 inches. It's pretty small, for a camera given the potential this camera could have. Now speaking about dials, the G15 has a dial in the front which you can use to control your aperture depending on if you're shooting in aperture priority. So the dial on the front is the primary dial while the one on the back is the secondary dial. So if you're shooting in manual mode, you'll be using both of them. There is one dial dedicated to exposure compensation, which is pretty neat, so you don't have to go through the menu. And then there is a dedicated button for recording. Also marked by the G15 is the optical viewfinder that's kind of become a hallmark for all the G series cameras. The viewfinder in our opinion isn't all that useful because through this you can see the lens. It doesn't give you full coverage from the lens. There's also a hot shoe that is compatible with all of Canon's existing speed light flashes, and there is also a pop-up flash which you can just raise with the push of a button. The other thing that we felt about the G15 is that even though it's built solid, it's pretty nice, it's very light, it's ergonomic. Unfortunately, it doesn't really fit very well into our pockets. So if I was to slip the camera into my pocket right now, I'd have a hard time walking around. But to start with, it would just take a lot of effort to get it in there. We didn't face that with the RX100, so but the P7700 on the other hand is even bigger. Now we've been shooting with the G15 for a while and there is a lot to really like about this camera. One, it's fast, it's responsive. The AF on this thing is absolutely amazing. It focuses so fast. We've never seen something like this before in a point and shoot. But the most impressive feature is the macro mode. Normally in cameras in this category, the macro mode generally goes ignored, and while the P7700 just can't focus close enough, the Canon G15 goes all the way up to 1 centimeter. That is the minimum focusing distance at the widest end. So you can go pretty close to a flower, take a close-up shot, and the sensor resolves all the details and all the colors beautifully. Canon also says that you can shoot with the G15 all the way up to 10 frames per second, but that's not actually true. If you're shooting in RAW, then you only get about 1.2 frames per second. Not very impressive, but then again, this is not designed to be a sports camera. So the Canon G15 costs 35,000 bucks, and so does the RX100. Both cameras, same price, same category, but what's so different about them? This is better than the RX100 with respect to the fact that it can zoom farther, and it has a better aperture range. It gives you faster aperture throughout the entire zoom range with respect to the RX100. However, the RX100 does have a much bigger sensor. It's a whole 1-inch sensor, while this is just 1 by 1.7 inches. The advantages of a bigger sensor versus the advantages of faster aperture, well, that's up to you to decide where you want to spend the money. As a conclusion, there is one thing that we'd like to point out. Canon has the G1X, which is a bigger brother of the G15. It costs significantly more, has a bigger APS-C sensor, but poorer optics. And by poorer we mean it has a slower aperture range. So often we wondered why Canon would skimp out on the bigger sensor. Why not just put the bigger sensor in the G15, charge maybe a little more, and give the user both the luxury of a fast aperture lens and the bigger sensor, which is something that honestly, as an enthusiast, as a photographer, I would kill for in a point and shoot. So overall, I would give this camera a 4 out of 5. It's beautiful. I would take this with me everywhere I go, and shooting with it is just that awesome.